Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Perspective. I'm your host, Khalid Butt, and we're going to discuss the internal turmoil amongst the political parties in the wake of the raid that was made on Hamza Shabazz's house by the NAB, and also the Prime Minister Imran Khan, who has invited Pakistan People's Party Chairman Rawal Bhutto Zardari and former President Asif Ali Zardari to stage a sit-in in the government in Islamabad if they so wish. He has said that their efforts to bring down the PTI government will not succeed. I quote unquote, Zardari Saab, no matter how hard you push, no government is going anywhere, but you are going to jail. That was what was said by Prime Minister Imran Khan. Also, there has been a lot of condemnation on the raid by the NAB of Hamza Shabazz's house. Hamza Shabazz himself addressed the media in which he said that he felt violated by this raid by the NAB. Also, the spokesperson for the Punjab Chief Minister Shahbaz Gill has said that NAB is an autonomous institution and it does not require the government's permission to carry out any action. Now, where is all of this going to go? Will the Pakistan People's Party finally make a sit-in in Islamabad, as has been done in the past by the PTI in 2014 as well? And will the PMLN and other parties join the ranks of the Pakistan People's Party? Why is the Pakistan People's Party doing politics on the NAB cases and the 18th Amendment? To talk about that and more, we've been joined by two important guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. On my very right is Barrister Safiullah Ghori. You're a legal expert. Ghori Saab, pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you.
And our second guest is one of our regulars, Javed Rana Saab. You're a political analyst. Thank you very much, Rana Saab, also to have joined us. Let's begin with you, Ghori Saab. How do you see all of that? The statements emanating from the Pakistan People's Party, the statements emanating by PMLN after the raid by the NAB on Hamza Shabazz's house, by Maryam Aurangzeb and other leaders from the PMLN, and of course the statement by the PTI in which our Prime Minister has invited the Pakistan People's Party to come and do a sit-in in Islamabad. How do you see all of this developing? Do you see the political arena heating up in the days to come?
No, I'm afraid I do not, Omar. And I'll just answer the first part of the question.
Fine.
Which is the raid on Hamza Shabazz's residence. It's genuinely shocking for me as a lawyer to have learned that NAB, with proper legal arrest warrants, went to arrest Hamza Shabazz, and there a host of PMLN workers came in and obstructed NAB from doing so. This is an absolute violation of law which nobody seems to be talking about. The issue is not whether NAB is raiding his residence for any ulterior motive. It's about the rule of law within the country. This falls strictly under the ambit of section 172 of the PPC, which is obstruction of justice. If a person who has direct warrants, and these are warrants of from a judicial authority, which is the chairman NAB himself. He has issued warrants, and those warrants enable any officers of NAB. There were 7 officers of NAB who went there, and their clothes were torn, they were jeered at, they were insulted, and they were thrown out of there.
Can there be any legal repercussions of all of that?
Of course. So just to begin with, as far as the law is concerned, the law sees all those people who were trying to defend Hamza Shabazz, whether right or wrong. I'm not here to debate on whether the arrest warrants were legal, whether they were justified, whether he really does have stashed assets or not. The fact remains that NAB is an authority, and it has the right to investigate anyone it so wishes. And if the investigation requires that a person be brought into investigation, brought and arrested by force, then so be it. Maybe he was issued notices before that. I'm not certain as to what happened before that. But the reality is that warrants are a legal standard, and they are issued whenever such an arrest needs to take place, which they did have. So on the one hand, PML Nawaz has violated the law of the country.
And it's not as if Ghori Saab, the NAB is an institution that is something new to the political arena.
Absolutely.
It has been there since many years. It has already been in working in the previous tenures as well of the government. So don't they know how they work?
Absolutely, and this is how they work. This is precisely what happens. They get a warrant, they go and arrest someone. And if the person is not guilty, then they have every chance to go and defend themselves. If they arrest someone today, if they, for instance, were to arrest Hamza Shabazz could have gone to the High Court, to the magistrate tomorrow, explained his case and gotten out immediately. But to break the law of the country, to disown the institutions of the country, to weaken them in the name of his own political person is nothing short of turning Pakistan into a fiefdom.
Can
This-
the people who broke the law when the NAP team went to arrest Hamza Shabazz, can these people also be arrested?
all of them can, it's not even a matter of can they be arrested. The real question is should they be arrested.
All right.
Because that they have, as a matter of fact, already conducted a violation of the law. This much we know for a fact. This much is an admitted fact. Even by PM and Nawaz themselves, they have admitted to the fact that they did not let the NAB officials enter. And if we have an admission, then the next question is that was it a violation of the law? Very clearly it was, because they did have a legal warrant with them. If such a matter takes place, this is very clearly an obstruction of justice.
All right,
and,
all right.
And so this is something that they really need to attend to.
All right. This
immediately.
is something that the government and the NAB really need to attend to. Javed Rana Sahib, Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry, has accused Hamza Shabazz of assaulting in NAB officials, but he also made it clear that this accountability process is going to go on. And I quote unquote, has Hamza Shabazz been a politician and a true leader, he would have surrendered himself and would have said that arrest me and prove the allegations against me. Why didn't this happen?
I think PMLN is not learning from its own history, a very short history. You know, before these elections, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif launched a campaign against the judiciary, launched a campaign against the military, particularly they targeted judges. And now in the hindsight, now the reports that are leaked from the Sharif families that suggest that now Nawaz Sharif and his daughter have been repenting. They should not have launched that kind of systematic campaign. In addition to what my colleague is saying, it makes an absolute sense. We are not debating the merits and the demerits of NAB's reference, which is likely to be filed against him. Here is bigger question is why that obstruction to begin with take place. It should not have taken place. So that is an additional offense. If NAB wishes, I think they can go for it, for additional charge. But I really doubt, because of political consideration, NAB would not get into this. Now there are now media reports which are suggesting that the reason NAB is actually trying to investigate against Hamza Shabazz is because of the fact that there is 200,000% accumulation of his assets. So we have to understand the mechanics with which, unfortunately, our mainstream opposition leaders have been operating with. Both major political parties from the opposition, everybody knows they are perceived to be corrupt, but their mechanics of corruptions are different. PMLN is known to be very sophisticated. They leave little trace of their corruption behind.
All right.
And that is why...
That is unlike the Pakistan People's Party. This
that
is what you're trying to say.
Unlike Pakistan People's Party. That is why there is a special law, which is that, if there is accumulation of assets, so it is the public office holder who has to come up with an evidence. And by the way, this law is not in isolation. This is in vogue in so many other parts of the world. So I think when it comes to accumulation of assets, then I think the NAB is going to invoke that part of the law.
All right.
But a very interesting part is that in case of Zardari, he leaves behind a lot of traces, a lot of evidence. And then he gets justice usually
a lot of accounts.
And in the past, he got justice on technical grounds. And technical ground was that when People's Party was in power from 2008 to 2013, they destroyed the original documents. And Zardari was exonerated from the court on technical ground that since there are no regional documents,
no proof against him.
No proof against him. So they exonerated him. So this does not mean that if he has been exonerated, he's not corrupt. So unfortunately, the bigger challenge in Pakistan is that how to prosecute those politicians who are well known to be corrupt, against whom there is a reasonably good amount of evidence. They usually go scot-free because of technical grounds, because of the manipulations, the political manipulations that they play behind the scene.
All right, that is very interesting. Political grounds, technical issues due to which some people go scot-free because there is no tangible proof against them. As a lawyer, as a legal expert, Hori Saab, how can we get hold of elements, people, let's not name names, let's just generalize the whole thing, A, B or C. you have assets beyond means, you don't know where it came from, but there is no tangible proof against you. How can you legally proceed against that person or those persons?
So at the moment, as the law stands, if you are asking me about what the law is.
Yes, exactly. I'm
as
asking you
as it stands, there is no strict requirement to prove how those assets were accumulated. It's a requirement of justice, so to speak, but not a requirement of Pakistani law at the moment. The Pakistani law is presumptive. NAB law is taken to be as a presumptive law. So if NAB, for instance, catches you, and NAB states that you have had assets beyond your mean, it is not NAB's responsibility to prove how you got those assets. Instead, the burden of proof is reversed, and the asset lies then upon the person to prove how they made those assets.
But if they cannot prove, then what?
Right, and if they cannot prove, then they are automatically presumed to be guilty. And so this is what the shifting of the burden of proof is. So where the maximum of justice is innocent until proven guilty, this reverses the burden of proof.
It's guilty until proven innocent.
Guilty until proven innocent, and you are to prove yourself innocent by your own actions. So for instance, if Hamza Shabazz was arrested and Hamza Shabazz was confronted with a variety of properties, it would have been on to Hamza Shabazz to prove that he is the one who has made those assets through legal means rather than through any illegal means. He cannot turn around and say, no, NAB, it is your responsibility to prove how I went ahead and maybe got these through kickbacks or bribery or any of these means. So here's what the big issue is, that so we already have the law, but like Javed Sahab said, and this is a very important issue, the law of evidence in Pakistan is archaic. Our Evidence Act is of 1860. It's back when.
Why is it archaic? Why haven't we done anything to update the laws?
That's a very good question. And so updating the laws is something that the parliament ought to do. And the parliament, the very people who are now getting caught by these laws are the same people who have never bothered to update these laws. Had they bothered to update NAB law, had they bothered to update evidence law, brought it up to international standards at the very least, we would
the
not
accountability could have been quicker, could have been swifter.
Not only quicker, swifter, but also more just. And at present, because of the very problems, for instance, like Javed Sahab has just mentioned, there is this big issue in Pakistan and Pakistani courts on the production of original documents. And so when we have a very corrupt system generally, it's not just the courts that are corrupt, it's also the prosecution, it's also the government departments that are corrupt. It's very easy to make a file disappear. So you could perhaps have photocopies, but original evidence disappears all the time in Pakistan. You could send it to forensic lab, you have had cases of rape and you have had cases of murder in which murder weapons have disappeared, in which DNA evidence has just disappeared. But what about the recordings of that DNA evidence on a computer file? Why is that not considered to be equal evidence? Why does it need to be displayed in courts? And so because this is an ancient form of advocacy. Pakistan has not updated its system, and once again, like I said, the entire onus lies on not only the previous governments but also now on this government to quickly update it.
But for that, you see, as you say, it's the parliament that's going to change the laws.
Absolutely.
We need a 2/3 majority, don't you?
Absolutely.
And will we get the 2/3 majority to change these laws?
This is very interesting.
No,
It's
a quite simple majority when it comes to amendments in the subordinate legislation. 2/3 majority requires only when you want to bring an amendment to the Constitution.
Right, but even if we were to just look at the role of the opposition parties right now, it's a problem that affects everyone. It's affected people within the PTI. There are a lot of people within PTI who are suffering because of this. There are a lot of, for instance, Jahangir Tareen, who had assets beyond his means, and there are people from other parties. This is something that all parties could agree on, yet they are unable to agree on it. And so this points to only one problem within. There's clearly not a lack of will here. The problem is a lack of capacity. That's overwhelmingly clear. The fact that people are unable to update their laws simply because they do not know how to update them.
Javed Sahab, how do you overcome this lack of capability, as is claimed by Wali Sahab?
I think the bigger problem with the NAB is there are two things. One is that I think some sort of perception does exist that it has been influenced by the state institution in the past, and in one way or the other right now. Because when Shabazz was arrested by NAB, then it had followed media reports that there was a sort of underhand deal of Sharif family, particularly of Shabazz Sharif. And that is why he is unlikely to be arrested. So obviously the state institutions come under pressure, and they have to prove it the other way around. There may be an element of underhand understanding, but when there is sort of...
But this underhand understanding is, there's no proof of it.
There's no proof of it. So then he was arrested. And now, since Nawaz Sharif was released, again, that kind of media reports have started emerging in the papers. And I think, again, this same thing has happened. Well, this is purely a subjective speculation. There is no hard evidence to prove it in both ways. But again, it is, I think, a responsibility of the NAB to make it clear that it should be seen to be operating independently, without any external influence, without any political considerations. Now, if they want to now arrest Hamza Sharif, they should make it clear. They should
Hamza Shabazz.
Hamza Shabazz. They should make it happen in one way or the other, because it is, to begin with now, it is simply a question of establishing the writ of the state.
And that is very important under these circumstances,
that
the
is
writ of the
extremely
state.
important. I think more appropriate it would be that the Hamza Shabazz should himself surrender.
All right.
Because he is a son of a former chief minister, the son of an opposition leader. So if he violates law, if he abuses the law, uses his own private force,
You put a bad precedent.
you set a bad precedent. So that, to begin with, I think he should surrender himself.
All right.
And then I think the NAB has to be very particular about one thing. There have been allegations against every third, fourth political leaders. Until and unless they make it sure that they have a prosecutable hard evidence, they should not arrest any political leader. Because they would be, the high court would set them free on bail, or then in the court they would be exonerated. That is, I think that does not abode well for the very reputation of the NAB.
All right. Let's talk about the reputation of the NAB, Ghori Saab. Fawaz Chaudhry Saab, in response to what is happening, said that accountability cannot be undone by loud speeches. We've seen the Pakistan People's Party make them. We've seen the workers of the PMLN make them. And on the other hand, a lot of question marks that these opposition parties also put on the veracity of the NAB itself as an institution. Is the NAB, in your point of view, A, independent enough? B, do you agree with the statement of our minister who says accountability cannot be undone by loud speeches?
I absolutely agree with this statement. So here's what the question is, and it's happened on various talk shows before. It's something that the PTI has been saying on several occasions, which is that the chairman NAB is somebody who was appointed by a consensus of PTI and PMLN.
Exactly.
Then
why the hue and cry? This is what I don't understand.
So there is absolutely no justification. I believe that for the first time, NAB has been given a free rein. That for the first time, NAB has been given some funds and NAB is able to work. Now, as far as the credibility of NAB is concerned, I'm a person who practices a little bit of NAB law. I go to the courts and I see how things as they happen in the NAB courts and the special courts. And it's very interesting to state here that for every reference that NAB files, they spend a considerable amount of money. So they are simply unable to go around filing frivolous cases. And they have a 93% conviction rate. That is a tremendous conviction rate. That is more than any other agency within Pakistan. So NAB is obviously looking at everything, and this is something that we should all accept, because the fact remains that Pakistan, I don't think there is anything that we could disagree upon. The fact that Pakistan has been a victim of tremendous corruption. That Pakistan has, for instance, as far as Transparency International Corruption Index is concerned, we rank as a corrupt country. For instance, as far as the corruption perception of the people are concerned, we all at some level have experienced corruption. And so obviously, the fact remains that there is corruption within Pakistan. The question is only as to who is doing this corruption and who is going to catch this corruption. And even if this corruption gets prosecuted after a long time, even if it takes years, which it does in the legal system, the fact remains that we need to set up an environment which is conducive to the idea of justice, an environment where people feel that corruption is decreasing at the very least. So as they say, there's a legal maxim which states that justice must not only be done, but it must manifestly seen to be done.
All right. Justice must not only be done, but is also manifestly seems to be done as per the law. Now, when people say that the NAB is an autonomous agency that works, and Ghori Sahab has very rightly said that 93% of conviction rate has come from the NAB, the same political parties that now accuse the NAB under the present government are the same parties that were happy when the NAB arrested other political opponents in their times when they were part of the government. Why this hue and cry now? A, Javed Rana Sahab. B, can we tightened the accountability process under this hue and cry, following this hue and cry, can the government move ahead with a more stringent accountability process?
I think when the proceeding was happening in the Supreme Court against the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, the remarks of the judges were very important to recall. And they said that we feel that there is a death of NAB. Because at that particular point of time, the then chairman of the NAB, he said, I'm not going to open up any case against the sitting Prime Minister. I'm not going to investigate. FBR was not ready to investigate. FIA was not ready to investigate. And then the judges said, what we can do? We are now left with no option.
Helpless.
Helpless. But they said we would not be helpless to that extent, but we are going to do something. And then they brought in between ISI, MI, their representative. They made their own joint investigation team. And then they came up with the hard evidence. Now, in Pakistan, the trouble is that there is a propaganda versus the legal evidence. In case of Nawaz Sharif, you see, there was a plenty of evidence on the basis of which two judges decided that he stand disqualified. Other three judges said, no, let's wait. Let there be more evidence. And those three judges, they disqualified him on the basis of a confession, which is the least reported, which is the least debated upon. And that was that he concealed the assets outside Pakistan. And to everybody else, he's telling, look, I had taken salary from my son. The law doesn't understand this. You are employed there. That is what the law says. But he interpreted everything in a political context, in a cultural context, to make himself as a victim of some sort of political witch hunt while he was the Prime Minister. He did everything to make it sure that there is no investigation is conducted against him. And there was more than a year, I think, close to 1 year, when the Supreme Court actually conducted this entire proceeding. And the Supreme Court was very lenient. And there was, clear evidence of perjury by the Sharif family. They forged the documents. They tried to befool the court. And nonetheless, the Supreme Court did not order additional prosecution against them. They could have been jailed for 6 years just on the ground that they engaged themselves in perjury. And that is why when there was his trial in the NAB court, what happened? The Sharif family, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, his daughter, his son-in-law, they did not come up with any evidence to prove the legitimacy of their assets. They did not. The reason was, if had they come, they would have come with the same forged documents. And they could not have reproduced those forged documents. And had they produced more documents, that means that would have been a contradiction. And there would have been more, I would say, multiplied charges of perjury. So people don't talk about it. There's a least debate about it. We talk about the politics. No, there is a victimhood. They are being discriminated. Then there is an allegation, which partially that is true, that the why NAB is not holding accountability across the board. Generally, that is more referred about. Why there are not cases against the retired military general Pervez Musharraf and other generals. That is there, they are right. Why the NAB is not more active against the leaders from the ruling party. There I agree with them. But again, we have to see the amount of charges against the ruling party's leaders. And
versus the amount of charges
versus
that are
the amount of the charges
leaders
against Asad Zardari and Sharif family. There is no comparison. So the accountability has to be started from those political leaders who had decades in governing Pakistan, against whom the amount of allegations is a huge. In case of Asad Zardari, there are rough estimates going by the investigation which has taken place so far, that probably 1/3 of the Sindh budget was misappropriated. The amount was siphoned off in a very systematic manner, and yet they would propagate that they are being victimized. And they are not talking about, about the allegation against them. They are talking about the problems with the government. They are right. But again, after six or 7 months, there cannot be campaign or agitation against a sitting government. That's not going to work. And generally, strong public perception is that the reason opposition is so much active these days is because that they are facing accountability.
Had they not be facing accountability, in your point of view, would there be sit-ins as much as they are? Would the Pakistan People's Party, Ghori Sahib, let's come to you, would the Pakistan People's Party say that we will do a sit-in had there not been under an accountability process?
Absolutely not. So this is an age-old People's Party tactic. This is not the first time People's Party has resorted to this. So if I were to just jog your memory and go back to an earlier time, an Ihtisab Commission was set up by Nawaz Sharif, and in that Ihtisab Commission, Benazir's corruption was being investigated. Benazir resorted to sit-ins. Benazir decided to hold countrywide march. The purpose of these countrywide marches was to roll back the Ihtisab Commission, and this is a strategy that successfully worked. It worked in People's Party's favor.
Will it work now?
I have absolutely no doubt that it will never work, because there was a huge difference between the popularity that People's Party enjoyed in the earlier days and what it has right now. As Imran Khan himself stated that, you know, if Bilawal can hold a sit-in for 1 week, he's willing to listen to Bilawal's demands or whatever they may be. But the fact remains that right now they're simply unable to hold a sit-in for 2 reasons. Number one, that people, their own followers, do not believe them. Number two, the usual mode of these sit-ins was to pay off the protesters. They used to gather these protesters. These were bought protesters. Right now, when all the accounts are being looked at, they simply do not have the money to go around spending on random protesters. And the time, yes. This is a time of, you know, a lot of social media where such a thing can very easily be caught. When there is a very strong public eye on them, they can simply not take that risk. And the fact remains that they do not enjoy that kind of popularity anymore as they did before. But I'll just state here that People's Party is one political party that has been consistently against the idea of any sort of accountability. It is the only province, the province of Sindh was the only province of Sindh that passed a bill to repeal the NAB ordinance, if you recall, because they thought that, and they left a void for accountability. Sindh was in fact the only province where there was no accountability process for a little while until it was reimposed. Sindh has been the only province that has been consistently suffering because of a lack of updating of laws, as we were just talking about different laws, especially when it comes to corruption laws. Sindh is where they seem to be lacking the most. And so very clearly, what we see right now is, and here's what I feel has been happening. There's this theory called the theory of state capture. And the idea is that sometimes families become so strong that they capture an entire state, and all state institutions work to defend just that person. This happened in the case of the Panama Leaks, when there was one person, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and the entire state, the FBR, the NAB, the FIA, all of them were, instead of prosecuting that person, were actively standing up to defend that person. That was a captured state. Similarly, we have a captured province right now. We have the province of Sindh, where they have complete control, which they see as their own personal property, which they see as a little kingdom. And in Punjab's case, we see that Hamza Sharif, who's perhaps Hamza Shabazz, who's been the prince of Punjab, given that his father has been the ruling master of Punjab for the longest time, we see that he takes personal offense to the idea of reporting to any authority, and would rather that his workers come and tear apart that authority than anything happen to his own person. So what we have been seeing for the longest time is that Pakistan has been governed not by institutions, but by families. And for the first time, we are seeing that there is a political party, PTI, as many problems as PTI might have, as many issues.
But there is no family dynastic politics.
There is no dynastic politics. It's a federal party. It's won elections in KPK, in Punjab, and in the biggest city of Sindh, Karachi. For the first time, a federal party has come about in Karachi. It's not based on any ethnicity. It's not based on any language. It's based on an overarching idea of Pakistan. And whether people agree with it or not is a separate debate. The fact remains that this is an ideology that is very unacceptable to the strongly nationalist parties that existed beforehand, that used to play with the minds and the hearts of people in the form of languages and cultures and everything. And so, whereas I do believe that People's Party is going to try and play the Sindh card, is going to try and talk about the Indus Water Treaty, is going to go and talk about the rights of the Sindhi people. Perhaps Nawaz Sharif is also tabling different things. There's been times when he has gotten up and held the slogan saying "Jag Punjabi Jag, pag pe lag gaye daag." And so whereas they will resort eventually to playing with the emotions of people based on their caste, creeds and religion, I don't think that there is any chance that any of these things will succeed, because right now Pakistan is undergoing a completely different trajectory.
All right, when we talk of a completely different trajectory, Javed Rana Saab, do we also kind of make this point that the people in Pakistan are becoming more and more aware about Pakistan's politics, the way politics are done in the country, and about Pakistani politicians and their maneuvering?
I think People's Party is still living in 80s and 90s. And from 90s onwards, there is a new generation. Or rather, I would say from the new century, there is a new generation. You know, they have become now more qualified to be a voter. So it's a demographic have changed. The mindset of the people is fast changing. People are now far more educated. They are aware. There is a social media. There are private televisions. So they can make distinction between what is proper.
But are people being aware, are they getting more and more aware of their rights as well, of their right to vote for the right person and the right party? Your point of view, sir, because it's very important under the whole scenario of a so-called Sindh card being used by the Pakistan People's Party, as Ghori Sahab says, and the Punjab card being used by the PMLN.
I think in Punjab card is not going to work. I myself belong to the central Punjab. I understand the mindset of the people. That card is not going to work, and I really doubt that the PMLN would ever go for that kind of evoking that card.
All right.
In Sindh, unfortunately, that has happened, and that probably would happen again. In interior Sindh, there's a mushroom growth of illiteracy. It has been there since long, and that is the success of People's Party traditionally.
That the people are illiterate, so they do not understand their due rights, and
Exactly.
they do not understand the right mentality of the politicians.
You see, the People's Party is repeating itself. PMLN is they are all repeating themselves. They are trying to pose themselves as victims of some sort of.
They have not renewed their strategy.
And you remember, in Pakistan, the debate between People's Party and the PMLN has always been, we witnessed over the period of time, who is the more corrupt. The debate is not that
Who is not corrupt?
who's not corrupt. The debate is who is the more corrupt. You see, not that debate is then both those who are holding debates, holding each other responsible for the corruptions, they are now in the dock. And there is a third party. And third party is not giving them any concession.
All right.
If PMLN or People's Party, God forbid, they get any concession behind the scene, that is not because of PTI. It is because of maybe something within the state institutions.
All right.
PTI is not going to give them concession. But again, here, the success of the PTI, the success of the NAB deeply lies in one thing, and that is a successful prosecution.
Transparent accountability.
Transparent accountability. Nawaz had it. Because he's saying that I'm not corrupt, there is no evidence of corruption against me. So, but the point is, the NAB says when you accumulate your assets and you don't come up with an evidence of the money with which you have built up these assets, that is a corruption. That is what the law says. PMLN says there is no evidence. That means you have not left any evidence behind. But
For them to prosecute you.
But
on.
again, how you have accumulated these assets. This is a very much corruption. You were in power. So the law safely assume that you have built up, accumulated these assets through illegitimate means.
Because there is no proof of legitimate means of acquiring this money.
And very interesting point I want to tell you.
Please.
I referred about one technical point that by destroying the original documents by Asif Zardari when he was in power. In 2007, when there was a National Reconciliation Order, which was actually a secret deal legalized in the parliament or through presidential ordinance, had that not been enacted for 3-4 weeks more, the former ruling couple would have been convicted by the Swiss courts. In fact, they were already convicted by a Swiss magistrate, and under their law, if there is an appeal, the punishment stands suspended. Now the Swiss High Court, the jury, they were about to reconfirm the judgment of the Swiss judge. And hurriedly, there was a deal here. through a legislation, those corruption cases were withdrawn. And because of the fact that those cases were withdrawn, they were not convicted.
All right, under all of this hullabaloo, this political maneuvering, as you might say, of the opposition, and who's the more corrupt, who's the less corrupt, there are also rumors of the PMLN and the Pakistan People's Party joining hands. Will that pave the way for a stronger opposition? Will that pave the way for the accountability process to kind of be diluted by the current government? Your take?
I do not believe that such a thing is possible. This is for this I'll refer to, and this is slightly more theoretical, but I'll refer to the game theory. If you've heard about it, it's called the prisoner's dilemma. So what you have, for instance, in the prisoner's dilemma is two people, and if they were both to confess against each other, both of them would go to jail. If neither of them were to confess, none of them would go to jail. Now the problem here is, like has been pointed out by Javed Saab, that we have two corrupt people, and all of these corrupt people, in fact, interestingly, and here's what the most interesting aspect of all of this is, all the corruption investigations that we are now seeing the fruition of were started by them against each other. In every case, it's not just in NAB, it's in the FIA, it's in the SECP, it's in the different tax departments. Both these governments have been trying to undermine each other. When they were there, both of them were trying to politically expose each other, both of them were trying to get political mileage over each other by gathering evidence and by starting investigations just so that they could get political leverage. Now all of this is in the hands of a third party. The question here is, if in case they try and join up, the question would be, why did they initiate investigations in the first place? It's not PTI.
You remember the Charter of Democracy also, they did join hands in the past as well.
They joined hands only to the extent of the parliament. But even during the Charter of Democracy, investigations, these were underhand matters. These were not publicized investigations that were taking place. A lot of these investigations that we see now, if we just look back to when they started, they were not started right now, after the PTI coming in. They were started way before that. And so these are investigations that were being secretly done through orders of the Prime Minister against each other. When Zardari was the Prime Minister, he ordered investigations into, for instance, the Chaudhry sugar mills against Nawaz Sharif. When Nawaz Sharif was there, he started looking into Tata steel mills against Zardari. Different cases. I'm not at liberty to divulge exactly which cases they were. But here's what's been happening. They wanted to gain political mileage. And so the next question would be, were they trying to maliciously prosecute each other? Were they trying to gather false evidence against the other person? So they are bound because of their own actions against each other. And not just that, it's now also the fact that both of them, and ideally both of them, would look for a chance to be whitewashed by PTI. Both of them would want a chance where PTI would accept either one of them.
All right, that brings me to the last question of this evening, Javed Rana Saab. Whitewashing, very interesting point, whitewashing of the opposition by the PTI that both these parties are kind of in one way or the other looking forward to. And the other thing is the pinpointing on the 18th Amendment by the Pakistan People's Party, when the PTI has said, and I quote, Fawaz Chaudhry Sahab also recently said that the 18th Amendment is staying for the moment. I mean, this is what I heard myself, quote unquote. A, doing politics on the 18th Amendment, B, whitewashing and looking for avenues to for the opposition to be whitewashed in one way or the other by the current government. Will that happen or won't it?
I think regardless what are the merits of the 18 amendments, merit and the demerits, it's not going to be undone. It requires 2/3 majority. The ruling party doesn't have it, so that debate is irrelevant.
All right.
And the second part is, I think my understanding is that the Prime Minister is feeling very frustrated with the kind of the system he's been going through. He's not very happy with his allies. He's not very happy with the opposition parties. The judicial system, the kind of the judicial system that has been put in place, that is not producing kind of the results that are required to actually get rid of corruption in Pakistan. And that is why there are apprehensions that the Shabazz may at the end of the day get himself exonerated from the trial court. And then he would say he was victimized. That would be whitewashing. And then public would be desensitized that you cannot catch corrupt. And some would say perhaps he was not a corrupt. So that is a very dangerous scenario. My understanding is that at one point of time, the frustration of the Prime Minister may bring him to a decision where he decides that he needs to hold a referendum to go for a presidential system. And I foresee that possibility sooner or later.
All right. All right, you foresee that possibility. Let's hold you on accountable on that, Javedana Sahab. Barrister Safiullah Khoury, Javedana Sahab, thank you so very much for a very lively discussion and an intense discussion on different aspects of this political tussle that is going on between the opposition and the government. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard that. All right, let's see what happens in the days to come. The PTI is all about accountability, but the opposition is not letting go. Only the coming days and weeks will tell us where all of this scenario is going. Allah Hafiz.